My family told me, "You'll drag the business down, don't leech off the family." They laughed when I asked to help. Decades later, those same voices were calling me, desperate for money, after I became the one quietly running everything they lost. Hey Reddit, my brother was the golden child, my parents worshipped him, and I was the useless one who'd never amount to anything. They shut me out of the family business, mocked me at every gathering, and made me their running joke for years. What they didn't know was that I was quietly building something of my own the whole time. So I, Peter 31 male, grew up in one of those families where favoritism wasn't just a thing, it was basically the house rules. Like Monopoly rules, except no one ever gave me $200 for passing go. My dad ran a decent-sized business. Not huge, not some Wall Street empire. But in our little city, he acted like he was Rockefeller. Everyone around him treated him like Mr. Successful local business owner. My mom was the hype woman in the background, nodding along, bragging at church events, and reminding everyone that her family was built different. Then there was my brother. Let's call him Golden Boy. He was 2 years older, taller than me, always had that smug smile like he'd already won before the race started. My parents practically polished his shoes for him. He's going to run the family business one day. He's sharp. He's ambitious. Basically, he could sneeze in the wrong direction, and they'd call it innovation. Me? I was the other kid. My dad never actually said it to my face, but he didn't have to. The way he talked to me told me exactly where I stood. I still remember being like 15, summer break, and asking him if I could help at the business. I wasn't asking for a CEO desk or anything. I was talking about stocking shelves, moving boxes, basic stuff. I wanted to learn the ropes, see how things worked. My dad literally laughed in my face. You? Number. You'd slow everyone down. You're not cut out for this. Then he patted my brother's shoulder in front of a couple of my uncles and said, "Now this one, he's the future. He's got my blood." Yeah. Imagine being told you're basically the knockoff brand of your own family. That moment kind of burned into my brain. I kept smiling, nodded like it didn't bother me, but inside I was like, cool, guess I'll find my own way then. And it wasn't a one-time thing either. Anytime I showed the slightest interest in the business, they treated it like I was trying to mooch. "Don't leech off family. Be your own man," Dad would say, while literally handing the keys of the operation to Golden Boy. The irony was so thick it could have clogged a drain. Family dinners were even worse. Picture this. We'd all sit down, Mom serving food like she was presenting trophies, Dad going on about sales numbers, contracts, whatever. Then it would turn into a 2-hour Golden Boy highlight reel. Your brother closed a deal today worth this much. Your brother just got promoted to this role. Your brother is learning leadership. Meanwhile, I'd be sitting there chewing on green beans like I was in the audience of his TED Talk. If I tried to talk about my stuff, school, side projects, anything, the conversation would get hijacked instantly. That's nice, but your brother, every single time. I started noticing something else too. Whenever I messed up, it was a big family meeting. Bad grade? You're not serious about life. Forgot to mow the lawn? No discipline. My brother could wreck the family car and Dad would cover for him, saying it's a learning experience. Me? If I even scratched a chair leg, it was "you don't respect other people's property." At some point, I realized I was the family's cautionary tale before I even hit 18. They'd tell me flat out, "You should try to be more like your brother." Honestly, it was kind of funny in a twisted way. Like they didn't even hide it. It was just the script. Brother equals genius. Me equals disappointment. But here's the part they didn't get. I wasn't crushed by it. I didn't go mope in my room and cry myself to sleep. I just took notes. Every insult, every dismissal, every laugh in my face, all of it went into this mental notebook. And the whole time I kept thinking, all right, watch me. By the time I was 18, I stopped even bothering to ask to join the family business. What was the point? They made it clear they didn't want me there. So while they were grooming Golden Boy with shiny suits and office tours, I was out here figuring things out on my own. And I'll be real, back then I didn't know exactly how it would play out. I just knew one thing. If they weren't going to give me a seat at the table, I'd build my own damn table. And not just that, I'd make it better, sturdier, and bigger than theirs. The funny part? They thought they broke me by shutting me out. They thought they'd won because I wasn't sitting in the office next to my brother pushing paper. What they didn't realize is they basically gave me a free pass. I wasn't tied to their rules, their way of doing business, or their old school mindset. I could experiment, fail, start again, and no one cared, because in their eyes, I was already a failure. Golden Boy, though, he was stuck. He had to succeed. He had to look perfect. He had to live up to the crown they put on his head. Me? I was free to do whatever I wanted, because no one expected anything from me. Honestly, that's the best advantage they could have accidentally given me. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, the favoritism stung. It still does when I think about it. But every time I picture my dad pointing at me in front of family, saying he'll drag us down, it just fuels me. Because I know exactly how wrong they were. And I knew even back then that one day, I'd get the last laugh. But of course, at this point in the story, I was just the useless kid sitting in the shadow of Golden Boy. And if you asked my parents back then, they'd have told you straight up, he'll end up broke, living in the streets. What they didn't realize is, I was already drawing the blueprint for owning the whole block. I didn't say that out loud, of course. If I had, my dad probably would have laughed so hard he'd choke on his steak, and my brother would have smirked like he just won another round in some invisible contest. So I kept it to myself. The first couple of years after I walked away from their business nonsense were rough. I didn't have their connections, their money, or even their name backing me up. All I had was stubbornness and a brain that refused to accept being the useless kid. I started small, like embarrassingly small. Odd jobs in the same industry, learning how things actually worked instead of just nodding along in boardrooms. While my brother was sitting in an air-conditioned office pretending to make deals, I was sweating through 12-hour days, figuring out supply chains, figuring out clients, and screwing up paperwork so bad once that I thought I'd tanked my first contract. Thing is, I didn't quit. Every time I failed, I learned. Every time someone told me no, I asked why. Slowly, piece by piece, I built something that didn't look like much from the outside, but it was mine. No handouts, no shortcuts, and I kind of loved that. By the time I hit my mid-20s, my little side hustle had grown into something legit. I had a handful of loyal clients, a small team, and just enough cash flow to keep the lights on and reinvest. No one in my family had a clue. They thought I was barely scraping by. And honestly, I didn't go out of my way to correct them. It was almost fun listening to them spin their little narratives. The digs never stopped. My brother would lean back in his chair, casually drop the cost of his new car, then glance at me like he expected me to clap. My dad's favorite line was, "Don't embarrass the family. Get serious about your life." My mom would just shake her head and tell me to stop chasing silly ideas. It was like they were reading off a script they'd memorized years ago. To them, I was stuck, broke, wasting time. They couldn't imagine me building anything because they couldn't see it. And that was my advantage. See, while they were busy polishing Golden Boy's crown, I was doubling down. I didn't buy flashy cars, didn't move into a big house, didn't show off anything. Every cent I made went right back into the business. Better equipment, better staff, smarter marketing. My friends would go out on weekends and I'd be in my office at midnight, staring at spreadsheets, trying to figure out how to stretch $1 into two. It worked. Slowly, then faster, my business took off. I signed clients that actually respected me. My company's reputation grew. Still under the radar, still quiet, but solid. By 27, I had something my parents never thought possible. Stability. Not just paycheck to paycheck survival. Real stability. I had my own office space downtown, my own contracts, and even a small penthouse I bought outright. No mortgage. I remember signing those papers and thinking, if they could see me now, they'd probably faint. But I didn't tell them. Not yet. Because here's the thing. When people already wrote you off, correcting them is pointless. You don't waste energy explaining. You let them talk. You let them laugh. And then, when the timing is right, you let reality smack them in the face. That's why I stayed quiet. That's why, even when I rolled up in a decent car, I'd park a street over before visiting my parents. They thought I was driving some beat-up hand-me-down, and I let them believe it. It was easier. Meanwhile, my brother kept up the act. And my parents? They kept treating me like the family embarrassment. At one dinner, my dad actually leaned across the table and said, "You're 30 soon. Don't you think it's time to get a real job?" I almost laughed right in his face. A real job? At that point, I was already making more in a month than my brother made in half a year. But sure, I'll go apply for an entry-level position just to make him happy. I didn't argue. I just smiled, said something vague like, "I'm working on it," and went back to eating. Let them believe whatever made them sleep at night. The more they mocked, the calmer I got. Because deep down, I knew something they didn't. They thought they had me figured out. But what they didn't realize was that every joke and every insult was just fuel. And sooner or later, they'd find out exactly who I'd become. For now, though, I let them have their little victories. I sat at the table, nodding along, while secretly planning moves that would one day flip their entire world upside down. And trust me, their arrogance was going to make it way too easy. I didn't even have to go looking for proof. They handed it to me. Thanksgiving rolled around that year, and I wasn't planning on going. I'd gotten real good at dodging family events. But then my grandma called me. She's the only one in the family who never treated me like the unwanted extra. She asked me, in that sweet voice that made it impossible to say no, to please come. It's Thanksgiving. Don't leave me alone with your father. How do you argue with that? So I went. Her house was packed. Turkey smell everywhere. Relatives I barely remembered shaking hands and giving me that polite smile, like they were already comparing me to my brother. The dining table was ridiculous, the kind of spread that made it look like we were on some food magazine cover. And of course, at the head of the table was my dad, already holding court like he was the mayor. My brother was right next to him, brand new watch glinting under the chandelier. Mom sat on the other side, glowing like she was proud to be the mother of a prodigy. I took a seat a few chairs down next to some cousin's kid who was glued to his phone. I figured if I kept my head down and shoveled turkey in my mouth, I'd get through the night without much damage. Yeah, no. Wishful thinking. It started slow. Dad brought up the business, like he always does, talking about quarterly numbers, bragging about some contract they signed, how his successor, aka my brother, was already proving to be a natural leader. Everyone nodded like it was gospel. Then, like clockwork, they turned the spotlight on me. So, Dad said, leaning back like he was about to enjoy himself. What are you doing these days, son? Still, tinkering with that little side project? I swear half the table perked up, waiting for my answer like it was part of the entertainment. My brother smirked, stabbed a piece of turkey, and muttered, if you can even call it work. I could have shut it down right there. I could have laid out my contracts, my numbers, everything I'd built, but I didn't. I just shrugged. Yeah, still tinkering. Then my brother decided to go for the kill. He leaned forward, grinning. Hey, maybe we should let Peter help at the business. He can fetch coffee, answer phones. You know, something simple so he doesn't embarrass us. The table broke into laughter. My dad laughed the hardest, slapping the table like it was comedy gold. That's not a bad idea. Maybe we can give him a little part-time work experience. I sat there, calm, smiling just enough to throw them off. Because while they were busy putting on their little comedy show, I was thinking about how clueless they really were. They thought this was them winning, me being the family punchline. What they didn't know was that outside this house, I was already in meetings with people who wouldn't even take their calls. I didn't defend myself, didn't argue. I just leaned back, nodded, and said, yeah, maybe I'll look into that. But inside, I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't angry. I was amused. Because every insult was another receipt I'd file away. Every smirk was another reminder that when the truth finally landed, it was going to hit them so hard they'd choke on it. The rest of the night went about the same. Dad bragged, Mom polished, brother preened, and me? I kept eating my turkey, sipping water, nodding like I was in on the joke. By the time dessert hit the table, I'd already decided something. That dinner wasn't just another round of humiliation. That was the last time they'd ever laugh at my expense. Next Thanksgiving, they'd be singing a very different tune. I knew it leaving Grandma's house that night, driving home while my dad's laughter was probably still echoing off her walls. They thought Thanksgiving was their yearly roast of me. What they didn't realize is that every joke, every fake laugh from the cousins, every smirk from my brother, it was fuel. I wasn't walking out of there humiliated. I was walking out with a plan. See, I'd been so focused on building my own business quietly that I hadn't really paid attention to theirs. My dad's company had been around forever, and in my family's heads, it was untouchable. Solid as a rock, my mom used to say. But that's the thing about castles. They look strong from the outside until you notice the cracks in the foundation. And the cracks were there. I just had to look. It started a week later when I ran into an old contact from one of my early jobs. We got coffee, talked shop, and out of nowhere he said, man, your dad's company is slipping. I raised an eyebrow. He leaned in, like he was letting me in on a secret. They're behind on deadlines. Over-promising, under-delivering. And your brother? He shook his head. Guy thinks charm can replace competence. Clients aren't buying it anymore. I didn't react, but inside I was grinning. First confirmation. From there, I started digging. Quietly. I didn't want them to have any clue I was paying attention. I talked to suppliers, people in the industry, a few old employees. The story was the same. Late payments, shady accounting, overconfidence. Apparently, my brother thought running a business was the same as updating his Instagram. Just keep posting flashy stuff, and people will assume it's going great. One supplier told me straight up, If your last name wasn't what it is, we'd have cut ties months ago. That was when I realized how bad it was. They weren't thriving. They were coasting on reputation. And reputation doesn't pay bills. The real gem came a few days later. I was talking with a potential client. Not someone I'd worked with yet, just a casual lunch meeting. He mentioned he was looking to switch providers because your dad's firm keeps blowing deadlines. I kept a straight face, asked a few more questions. Turns out this wasn't just any client. This was their biggest client, the one contract that basically kept their whole operation from toppling. If they lost this guy, the company wasn't just going to take a hit, it was going to bleed out. That's when it clicked. Their arrogance wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous. They were so busy pretending to be untouchable that they didn't even see the ground shifting under them. I spent the next couple of weeks piecing things together like a puzzle. My dad had personally guaranteed a risky loan for some expansion project, something about a property development tied to the business. Classic move. Bet big, act like it's a sure thing, then pretend nothing can go wrong. Except it was going wrong. The numbers weren't adding up. They were leveraged to the point of choking, and from the outside, it looked like a company living off fumes. Quick pause, fellas. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Thanks so much for your support. All right, back to the drama. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My contracts were stable, my growth was steady, and my client base was loyal because I actually delivered. But here's the kicker. They had no idea. They still thought I was broke, still thought I was the family joke. And honestly, that was perfect, because it meant they'd never see me coming. I remember sitting in my penthouse office one night, staring out at the skyline. Their office was maybe 5 miles away, a building with their name plastered on the front like it was some kind of landmark. And I couldn't stop thinking about how fragile it all really was. My dad strutted around like a king, but the truth was, his empire was sitting on toothpicks. I didn't rush anything. I didn't start plotting takeovers or making phone calls just yet. This wasn't about swinging fast. This was about timing. If you want to watch a structure collapse, you don't knock down the walls yourself. You just wait for the weak spots to give out, then push at the right angle. And the weak spots were everywhere. My dad's arrogance, my brother's incompetence, my mom's blind faith that the business would never fail. They were too busy laughing at me to realize they were laughing from inside a burning house. By the end of that month, I had a full picture. They were in debt. Their biggest client was frustrated. Their expansion gamble was on life support. The employees were restless. And yet, to everyone outside the inner circle, they still bragged like they were thriving. I wasn't mad about it anymore. I wasn't hurt. Honestly, I was entertained. Because the cracks in the castle weren't just cracks anymore. They were fractures. And all I had to do was be ready when the walls finally fell. Turns out, I didn't even have to wait that long. The crown jewel of my dad's company, their biggest client, the one holding up the entire circus, was practically begging to be stolen. I didn't kick the door down and say, "Hey, I'm the better option." I played it smart. I set up a casual meeting, made it look like networking. A coffee, some light conversation, nothing pushy, but the guy was already on edge. Within 10 minutes, he was venting about my dad's company. Late deliveries, missed deadlines, excuses stacked higher than the invoices. And my brother? He shows up to meetings like he's auditioning for a reality show. Talks a lot. Delivers nothing. I nodded, let him talk. Sometimes the best pitch is just listening. When he finally paused, I laid it out clean. No trash talk, no theatrics, just facts. Here's what I can do. Here's how much faster. Here's the numbers. No fluff. I showed him the systems I'd built, the way my team worked, the results we consistently delivered. Everything my dad's company used to do right before arrogance took the wheel. The guy leaned back in his chair, tapped his pen, and said, "If you can actually pull this off, you've got my business." That was it. No fireworks, no dramatic handshake, just a quiet switch that felt like flipping a breaker. And just like that, the oxygen left their building. I didn't announce it. I didn't strut into my parents' house waving the contract. I just went back to work, onboarding the client like it was any other Tuesday. Meanwhile, I knew exactly what was about to happen on their side. Within 2 weeks, word started to spread in the industry. Their golden client was gone. Suppliers were whispering about it. Employees were nervous. The office parking lot, the one that used to be full of shiny cars, started looking half empty. I drove by once just to see for myself. Their big sign out front was still polished, but inside you could feel the panic. People rushing around, my brother pacing with his phone glued to his ear, my dad's face red as he barked at someone. If I hadn't known better, I'd have thought it was a fire drill. But me? I just sat there in my car for a minute, watching. They had no clue I was the one holding their lifeline now. To them, I was still the broke son who couldn't hack it. That's what made it so sweet. The fallout hit fast. My cousin Jacob texted me one night, "Your dad is losing it." Apparently, a huge account just walked. He's blaming everyone but himself. I just replied with a thumbs up emoji. The best part was watching them keep up appearances. My mom was still bragging at church about how strong the business was, how my brother was the future of the industry. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, they were scrambling to plug holes in a sinking ship. It's funny how entitlement works. They still acted like nothing could touch them, even when the floor was caving in. I'd hear from mutual contacts how my dad was blaming the economy or lazy employees. Anything but the truth, that they lost because they got sloppy, arrogant, and stopped delivering. Meanwhile, my company was running smoother than ever. The new client fit right in, and my team crushed it. We weren't just delivering on promises, we were exceeding them. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. They were spiraling, and I was accelerating. A month later, I got an anonymous email, probably from one of their desperate employees, basically saying the company was in serious trouble. Debt collectors calling, vendors demanding payment. My brother had apparently gone off the rails trying to secure some flashy side deal that flopped. Dad was furious. Mom was panicking. And me? I was sitting at my desk, sipping coffee, reading that email like it was the morning paper. The client move had worked better than I imagined. Not only did it strengthen my company, it exposed just how fragile theirs really was. I didn't need to throw stones. They were already crumbling. All I had to do was let gravity do its thing. I knew what came next. They'd be desperate. They'd start selling assets, calling in favors, maybe even looking for buyers. And when that moment came, I was going to be ready with the cleanest check they'd ever seen. Because this wasn't about stealing one client. This was about pulling the rug out completely. And the best part? They still thought I was irrelevant. To them, I was the loser at Thanksgiving who maybe deserved a part-time gig fetching coffee. That delusion was my shield, and I was going to use it until the very last second. Sure enough, the moment came. The family business finally reached the stage where they couldn't bluff anymore. Debt was crushing them. Their expansion project collapsed. Employees were leaving. And their biggest client? Well, he was sitting in my office now, happy as ever. They had no choice but to sell. I knew about it before they did, thanks to the contacts I'd built. One of my old banking contacts tipped me off after the loan defaults started hitting their file, and a supplier buddy confirmed the rumors. The whispers were out. Dad's company is looking for a buyer. Fire sale price. To them, it must have felt humiliating. To me, it was Christmas morning. I didn't buy it directly. That would have ruined the surprise. I used a front group to secure the deal. I closed it through a holding LLC, then assigned the purchase to my company 2 days before the dinner. I structured it as an asset purchase, so I took the contracts, equipment, and IP, not the debt. Papers signed, contracts finalized. Their entire company, their legacy, was mine. Legally, cleanly, without them even realizing who was on the other end. A week later, I arranged the confrontation. Not at their office. No, that would have been too small. I had my assistant book a private room at one of the nicest restaurants in the city. High ceilings, white tablecloths, waiters who looked like they'd judge your credit score before pouring your water. The invitation was sent to them. Business opportunity. Important meeting. Must attend. Their broker had already told them the buyer wanted a face-to-face before finalizing anything, so they assumed that's what this was. Of course, they showed up. They walked in dressed like they were still kings of the industry. Dad in his suit, Mom with that smug half-smile, my brother flashing a new watch even though I knew he couldn't afford it. They spotted me at the table and looked confused. "Peter?" my dad said, eyebrows furrowed. "Where's the buyer?" I smiled. "Already here." We sat. They ordered drinks, trying to play it cool. My brother leaned back, smirk plastered on his face. "So what's this about? You finally found a job worth bragging about?" I didn't answer. I slid a folder across the table. Inside were the ownership documents. My name, my company. All signed, sealed, and final. My dad flipped through the pages, his face draining of color. My mom leaned over his shoulder, reading faster. My brother looked bored, until he saw the header with the company name. This is a joke," Dad muttered. "No joke," I said calmly. "I own it now. Your company, your legacy, everything. Silence. You could hear the clink of glasses from other tables. My mom finally spoke, voice sharp. Peter, you can't be serious. This is our business. Your father built this from nothing. Your brother... Yeah, I cut her off, leaning forward. I remember. Dad built it. Brother's the golden child. I was the useless one, right? The one who dragged everyone down. The one you told to go find a real job. Ringing any bells? My brother's jaw tightened. He tried to play it off with a smirk. You probably stole the money. No way you pulled this off yourself. I laughed. Stole it. Unlike you, I didn't need Daddy's name or a family handout. I built my company while you were busy polishing your Instagram feed. And now? I didn't just outgrow you, I bought you. That one hit. His smirk cracked. My dad slammed the folder shut. You don't understand. This company is the family name. It's who we are. You can't just take it away. Take it away. I leaned back, calm as ever. I didn't take anything. You put it up for sale. You were drowning, and I was the one with the life raft. Only difference is I didn't pull you in. I pulled the raft. Mom's cheeks went red. You're humiliating us. This isn't how family treats family. That made me laugh out loud. Family? You mean the same family that humiliated me at every dinner? The same family that told people I was broke, useless, living off scraps? The same family that said I should fetch coffee at the office like I was an intern? That family? They shifted uncomfortably. No one had an answer. So I twisted the knife. The truth is, you weren't protecting the family name. You were protecting your pride. You thought mocking me made you stronger, but all it did was blind you. While you were busy laughing at me, I was outbuilding you. And now, here we are. My brother finally snapped. Fine. You proved your point. You've got money. You bought the business. So what? Just give it back. It's ours. You don't even deserve it. The entitlement in his voice was insane. He genuinely believed I'd hand it over. I leaned across the table, stared him down, and said, Deserve it? I earned it. Every late night, every deal, every client I fought for. I earned this. You don't get to demand anything from me. Not anymore. My dad tried one last time, lowering his voice. Peter, if you don't give it back, we'll lose everything. The house, the business, everything we've built. I nodded slowly, letting the silence stretch. Then I gave them the line they handed me years ago. Then go live in the streets. The look on their faces was priceless. I stood, tossed some cash on the table for my dinner, and walked out. Left them sitting there under the chandeliers, staring at a folder that spelled the end of their empire. For once, I wasn't the punchline. I was the headline. Walking out of that restaurant felt like slamming the last chapter of a book I'd been forced to read since childhood. For once, I was the one holding the story, and they were just side characters who didn't like how it ended. The fallout started almost immediately. 3 days later, my cousin Jacob texted me. Your dad hasn't been seen at the office since the sale. People are talking. Everyone knows you own it now. I wasn't surprised. In our city, gossip spreads faster than invoices. Suppliers, ex-employees, competitors, they all found out, and they loved it. The son who was the family embarrassment turned out to be the guy writing the checks. Meanwhile, my parents and brother became the punchline. Every party, every networking event they went to, people whispered about how badly they'd been outplayed. I didn't even need to lift a finger. Their reputation collapsed all by itself. My brother got hit first. Without the company backing him, he was just another guy with debt and an ego. The fancy car? Repossessed. The condo? On the market within a month. He went from flexing new watches to pawning them. I heard he tried pitching himself to another firm, bragging about his leadership skills. But the industry's small. Everyone knew the truth. He was the guy who lost the crown jewel client and ran Daddy's business into the ground. Then came my parents. They'd spent decades bragging about how solid the family business was, how my brother was a prodigy, how I was the disappointment. Now, they were dodging people in grocery stores because they couldn't handle the looks. My mom even tried spinning it, telling people they sold the company strategically. Yeah, nothing screams strategic like selling for pennies to cover debt. Eventually, the calls started. First, a voicemail from my mom. Peter, we need to talk. We're still your parents. Family is family. I deleted it. Then my dad. We need to sit down. There's still a way forward if you're willing to compromise. Compromise? Translation, give it back. I ignored that too. Finally, they decided to go nuclear and showed up at the old headquarters, the building I'd just bought out from under them. Unannounced, they stormed past the receptionist like they still owned the place. My dad's face was red, my mom's voice was sharp, my brother was just scowling like someone stole his toy. I let them into the same conference room they used to hold court in. Only difference? I was at the head of the table now. Dad started in right away. Peter, this has gone far enough. You've embarrassed us long enough. Hand it back. I raised an eyebrow. Embarrassed you? You mean like when you told people I was broke? When you laughed at me every holiday dinner? When you told everyone I'd be better off fetching coffee? That kind of embarrassed? Mom folded her arms. We didn't mean it like that. We were just trying to push you to do better. I laughed. Push me? You shoved me out the door and told me not to leech off the family. Remember that line, Dad? Don't leech off the family. Funny how now you're standing here trying to leech off me, my brother snapped. You think this makes you some big shot? You're nothing without us. You'd still be living in our shadow if it wasn't for the family name. I leaned forward, smirking. Buddy, I built everything while you were playing CEO on training wheels. The only shadow I lived in was the one you created when you blocked out the sun with your ego. And now, I don't need your name. I own it. That shut him up. Dad slammed his fist on the table. We'll lose the house. Do you understand? You've doomed us. I shrugged. Not my problem. You built a castle on sand and called it a fortress. I just bought the land underneath it. They sat there, stunned. The entitlement dripping off them was unreal. They really thought I was going to cave, that some leftover guilt would make me hand over everything I'd worked for. So I gave them one last roast for the road. You wanted me to be more like my brother, right? Be the loyal heir, carry on the family legacy. But look around. Who's running things now? Who's paying the employees? Who's keeping the lights on? Spoiler, not the golden boy. And definitely not the guy who told me I'd drag the company down. My dad's jaw clenched. My mom's face went pale. My brother just looked at the floor. I stood up, opened the door, and gestured toward the hallway. Meeting's over. And next time you think about telling someone not to leech off the family, maybe don't end up on the wrong side of the table begging. They left without another word. After that, the begging turned into silence. Calls stopped. Messages dried up. The only updates I got came through Jacob. My parents sold their vacation property to cover bills. My brother picked up side work for a rival company, though he barely lasted 3 months before they canned him. Meanwhile, my company thrived. Former employees from their firm came over, grateful for stability. The client they lost to me became one of my best partners. And the business I bought for scraps? Within 2 quarters, it started turning a profit again under actual competent leadership. Every time I walked into that office with my name on the paperwork, I thought back to that teenage kid who just wanted to help out and got laughed at. The same kid who got told he'd never make it without riding his brother's coattails. Turns out, I didn't need their coattails. I pulled the rug out from under them instead. And that's the real punchline.